Hello, everyone. Today I'm thrilled to be joined by Dr. Bethany, who is the founder of Tempo Physical Therapy and Running Performance. Bethany is a doctor of physical therapy, orthopedic specialist, orthopedic certified specialist, and certified running coach who's passionate about helping runners move smarter, stronger, and healthier. Yeah, with a background of D1 track and cross country athlete, she combines her love for sports with a science-based approach, specializing in gait analysis, pelvic health, and individualized performance care. She's just getting passionate about getting to the root of the problem, building resilience, and helping athletes thrive.
Yeah, thank you so much,
Yeah,
Madeline.
this
I
is gonna be
appreciate the
fun.
warm intro. Yeah.
So let's just get started with hearing a little bit about your journey. What inspired you to pursue physical therapy, specializing in running and performance training, and what do you love most about working with runners and endurance athletes?
Yeah, so running has been in my life for several years now. I started when I was pretty little with soccer, actually, initially, and I was a midfielder, so I was like always running up and down the field. I think what kind of pushed me into cross country was in gym class. I found out I could do pretty good at the mile, and my gym teacher, who was also the cross country coach at the time, was like, "You should really try cross country." Like that was decent for gym class. So that kind of got the idea in my head, and I had always enjoyed going on like little runs. We have a family reunion every year where we'd have one, so I was like, okay, let me try running. And so I joined cross country, fell in love with it. What I really love about cross country and track is that you it's an individual within a team sport. So you're always trying to set goals for yourself. You're working together as a team to accomplish a bigger goal, but your performance matters. How driven you are, how dedicated you are on kind of all the little things builds up to these bigger goals. So it taught me a lot about leadership, team building, setting goals, having an action plan for those goals. And I feel like it's translated into my life as well. And I really enjoy working with runners because I see similar patterns. So a lot of what motivates runners motivates them in other things that they do. And they're very diligent, thoughtful, but that's also what can get us in trouble. So when we talk about injuries in a little bit, that same kind of drive to do better, better, better can sometimes get us into problems that we have to solve, and kind of what started this, why was it a training error. But I love endurance athletes in general. I think they have a lot of unique things that they love doing, whether it's just being outside. They found running to be therapeutic. They like doing it with others. There's lots of components to endurance sports that are good socially. They're good for your physical activity and well-being. And then they're good just to teach kids how do you set a goal? And it's not going to be something that happens quickly. Your goal might be several months or weeks from now, and what do you have to do now to get to that? And I think that translates into school life and other endeavors people are doing.
Well, knowing firsthand,
Yeah.
the grit that it takes
Yeah.
to those goals, and
Yes.
Everything, it's not linear.
Right.
You're gonna have your ups and your downs,
Yes.
and you've
Yeah.
lived it. You can relate with those endurance athletes.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's kind of part of what brought me into physical therapy too, is I've had my own injuries, and I was like, man, I wish I could do something about this. I wish I knew what was going on. And sometimes when you're coming from it, before PT school, before being an exercise science major, it was like, okay, I'm hurt. And then you're just relying on your coach or your parent to bring you somewhere, and you're kind of lost. You don't really know what's going on, how to get better. And I was really passionate about just learning more about the human body. So getting into PT really helped me learn more about the human body for a lot of different reasons, and injuries, but specifically for runners, there's so many pieces involved, not only in one's training plan that can lead to these injuries, but also just, are there weaknesses? Are there mobility deficits? Are there things that we're doing from a physical standpoint that could be better and help us long term?
Which kind of brings us into when it comes to evaluating a runner, if it be knee pain, shin pain, or hip, how do you approach evaluating their movement, gait, to really uncover what's going on?
Yeah, so there's several factors, obviously, and it can be an overwhelming process if you do a gait analysis and you're like, here's all the things I found, right? So I try to keep it really simple at first, and only change the things that are either really obvious or have a high correlation with what is likely causing their pain. So with a physical therapy evaluation, especially for a runner, what we start with is kind of just like a static or kind of standstill observation of like, okay, are we leaning off to one side? Are we compensating in any way? And some of this I'm just noticing in the subjective history. So the other good thing about runners is they know so much about their bodies that if you just listen really well during a subjective, that first intake, what they're telling you, you can usually start to kind of piece together, okay, what happened when, like, where was their training plan going? Were they ramping up too fast? Were they adding intensity too soon? So you get a lot right in the subjective. And then during the actual evaluation, I'm looking for those observational signs. Then if it's a lower extremity injury, we're screening the back just in case anything's referring down from the back. Then we're going through range of motion, so testing what their mobility is like. We're going through a strength test of all the involved and uninvolved side to compare. And then if they've been running still with the injury, like it's something that's just kind of nagging, like they can kind of muscle through it a little bit, we'll do a gait analysis. But if it's something where they've been in so much pain that they've had to stop running, then we'll save that for a later time because we got to get them pain-free first before we continue to run. So the gait analysis is very helpful though if it's more of like a muscular tendon type injury. Bone injuries we have to wait on, but anything muscular, tendon, ligament, we can get them on the treadmill and actually get video analysis from the front, side, and back to see if there's anything cadence related, step. So that's kind of like your how many steps you're taking, if that's efficient, and then if there's any sort of like if they've got hip drop or their knees are collapsing inwards or they're crossing over midline, what is their oscillation? So that's like how bouncy the runner is. So we're looking at a lot of different factors that research has shown to be tied to some impairments people are having. So if it's knee pain and they're overstriding, like what can we do with their cadence to kind of quicken that, make sure they're not overstriding? So we don't want to change everything all at once if we're seeing a lot of factors, but if we're like, oh yes, like overstriding can relate to knee pain, let's try this. And then the goal is by quickening their cadence or changing something with their running, does that translate to less pain? So sometimes people are very strong, they've got good mobility, and then you get them on the treadmill and they're like, I don't know how to use my muscles, you know? So some of it is that motor recruitment learning patterns that we're looking for.
When you're seeing such high performance athletes, you know, so like you're kind of looking for those little things that can make, I mean, running is so repetitive,
right?
So it's constant, you know, compression onto certain areas. And if they are just a little bit weak in some area, it can cascade so quickly.
Yeah, right? Especially because running is, it's not one movement, it's one movement over the series of several miles. So the other interesting thing is like, how does just hopping feel? You know, so some people, they're trying to go from walking to running, and it's like, well, every step you take is essentially a single leg jump. So you're trying to figure out like, okay, what do you feel like just jumping? So that's, and I know we'll get into some bone injury things. There's, you know, single leg hop test is one way to just see like, what does your body feel like when you're just hopping on it 10 times? Because your body's going to have to do that over and over for several miles. And our bodies are smart. They'll find ways to compensate. And, you know, especially when it comes to bone injuries, it can be hard for people to figure out, like, is this muscle, is this tendon, ligament, bone? And what are the common signs and symptoms to be like, okay, this is something I can maybe run with, or no, I need to back off and take some rest. So there's always ways I'm trying to work with people so that, you know, the one thing runners want to do is run. So it's like, how can we keep you as in the game as we can without, you know, sidelining you unless it is something that requires some period of rest.
Well, and just finding those like little things that might lead to injuries down the road too. You know, runners, they have so much grit. They have so much, they just want to, they'll push through a lot. So you're also trying to find these little areas that could lead to injuries down the road. And I think a lot of that, you know, comes from just other behavioral things that are going on outside of running too. And that's kind of tying back to that subjective, like, what else is going on in your life? You know, are you on your feet all day? Like, are you a nurse in the hospital and you work 12-hour shifts and then you're trying to fit in a run really quickly after it? So there's a lot of environmental and just like life factors that tie into running outside of like, you know, maybe the 1 hour of running that you do every day that you love. But what's going on around that? Like, how are we recovering? Are we getting the right fuel? Are we doing everything else right? Sleep. Like, there's so many factors.
Yeah.
which kind of brings us into a really
Yeah.
interesting topic that I want to talk to you about.
Yeah.
And as women, we have so many layers of complexity when it comes to training and recovery.
Yeah.
Can you explain what the female athlete triad,
Yeah.
or now what's known as Red S,
Yeah.
is, and why awareness around this is so important
Yeah,
in
for
both
sure.
recreational and competitive athletes?
Yeah, so female athlete triad has been around for several years, and it's essentially this connection between low energy intake. So this is basically like calories in, calories out. So you're thinking about your fueling, you're thinking about menstruation. So are these girls and women, are they getting their cycles? Or are they getting their periods? Have they lost it? Like, is there some disruption in it? And then what is their bone density? So there's kind of this triad that forms, and it is on a spectrum. So there can be factors within there where you're not like on the way worse end of it. Maybe it's like just starting. So there is a continuum of what the symptoms are. And then how does that translate to injury risk? So if we're not getting enough calories in, we're going to be taking nutrients from other parts of our bodies, like our bones, our muscles. Our bone density goes down. One of those signs is we lose our period, which then we're also not getting the nutrients we need and those natural hormone functions that are important for female athletes. And I think the hard thing for a lot of people is like being aware of what those signs are. So actually, when I was in undergrad, I did my honors thesis on female athlete triad awareness in high school athletes. And it was interesting. I just did the Suburban East Conference area at the time. So that's like northeast suburbs. But what we found is basically, a handful, maybe a few girls were aware out of several. I'm trying to think. We looked at least 7 to 10 teams. So if these girls aren't aware of it and coaches aren't telling their athletes about it, there's kind of this cascade effect of, okay, now a girl comes to you and she doesn't know, the implications of, oh, I had my period last year and I haven't been getting it. Mm-hmm. Or it's been normalized. So sometimes girls on teams are like, yeah, it's so nice not to think about it. Like it's nice not having, these cramps and this pain that I'm running with, but they don't realize like long-term what's happening to them. So as soon as that happens, that's a warning sign that something's going wrong. So we probably don't have enough fuel. And if that continues, then that injury risk gets higher. And so the number one risk for a bone stress injury is actually a bone stress injury. So as soon as you have one, your chance automatically is higher to have another one. So if we can reduce the risk of that happening early on, then long term, the chance of having more is going to be lower. And I do think that happens, it's something that's got to be educated. So whether that's coming from coaches, other healthcare providers, if they can kind of come into schools and talk about it, that's huge. And essentially, so that started with the female athletes, and then it evolved into Red S. So Red S is relative energy deficiency in sport, and that tied in male athletes. So now we're looking at all genders, and we're considering what are some other signs and symptoms that are going on that's telling us an athlete probably has low energy availability. And that low energy availability, I just like to think of it as like fuel in, fuel out. So if you think about your car can only go so long on that tank of fuel, right? Before it either putters out or it's taking from other sources, right? And at some point it just can't keep moving. Our bodies are very similar. If we're not giving it the fuel it needs to keep going, it's going to take from other areas, and that's when we start noticing these signs. So Red S started with the Olympic Writing Panel Committee in 2014, and it started to look at a bunch of different physiological and psychosocial factors within performance changes when we don't have that energy or when we don't have that fuel. So what we start seeing is sleep disturbances, mood disturbances, mental health changes. We see poor performances long term. All our like internal organs start changing, our hormones start fluctuating. There's this cascade effect when our body's not getting the fuel it needs. And I try to tell people it's kind of like you're going into survival mode, right? Like if you're starting to notice your cycles changing, all your energy stores are trying to keep the vital organs alive. So it can be a little bit of a scary conversation with people, especially if they're on the more severe side. So there's different types of low energy availability and how quickly some things can change. Like if you catch it early on, versus like if something's been going on for a long time, you almost have to treat it like an injury itself to get them the care they need. And for those individuals, I like having sports dietitians on hand. So it's very important, if any athlete or individual is concerned about their eating habits, or if they are just like, something's been off and I don't know what it is. Maybe their demands, like they demand more than they're actually putting in when they thought, they read an article online, they're like, oh, these are the things I should eat. But everyone's demands are unique. So I always recommend, go see a sports nutritionist, a registered dietitian to get that sort of education, because everyone's different.
And it's such, like, you have to be so gentle.
Yeah.
If you're also dealing with the mental health component, a lot of these runners maybe are a little bit, they're going to overthink everything. Right. So you have to be very careful and gentle as you approach them.
Yeah, I think communication is key. Like the words we use are super important. So if they're identifying as a runner, right? So if we take their identity away, they start to feel lost. And if they're sidelined, they can kind of spiral and go down these paths of, like hopelessness and depression. So it is really important to have that conversation of, I'm not a mental health therapist, but I know people who are and who work with athletes. Is that something you're interested in? Like, are you struggling? Are you having a hard time? And we have a couple screening tools that I use in physical therapy they're just like brief questions that if they're answering yes or no to those, that gives me a cue to be like, okay, like I see you answered this. Like, is this something that you're already seeing someone for? Would you like a contact if you're feeling comfortable to reach out to? Because there is a huge identity factor with sports in general. And if an athlete can't do what they want to do and they're not with their friends, like it just starts to become isolating. So, I mean, I'm also a running coach and I coach for a high school team. And I think one thing that we try to do is have that conversation with the athlete. Like, does it help for you to be here and at least be with the team? Or does it help you to, use this time so you can go get physical therapy and not feel like you're getting spread too thin? So I think it's having a good conversation with the athlete and their family to be like, what do you need right now to feel supported? So that they're not on their own trying to figure out cross training and everything else. You need a team approach to help support them in that.
Well, and it just, like I love how you kind of talked into just, we need to start talking about it. We need to normalize periods. And if someone's not having their cycle, we need to talk about it.
Yep, exactly.
And is there a certain number of periods that is it 3 in a row if they miss, then it's like a big red flag?
Yeah, exactly. So sometimes, like there could be other life stresses that are going on and maybe you had an abnormal month, but if there's a pattern of that and you noticed weight loss and your eating patterns change, like there's some other signs that could be like, okay, like, maybe we're missing out on something. So it is always important to check. And maybe it wasn't, a hyperfixation on running itself that caused it. It could have been stress related to something else in their life. Like maybe they have a lot of tests coming up and they're really overwhelmed. So they're like, oh, I just didn't have time to eat this morning. And then it just like trickles into a habit that starts forming. So there's some of that. There's some people whose eating is good, but they're over exercising. Or they just have like aversions to certain foods. So there's lots of little things that can happen. And there's a couple screening tools again that I use for people that I'm concerned about. One is the LEAF Q and one is the LEAN Q. So one's for female athletes, one's for male athletes. And it's something they can fill out on their own too, to kind of check in and be like, oh yeah, like this has been happening, or I have noticed that I've lost my cycle. And then for men, what we're looking for is, are they having erectile dysfunction? Are they having low libido? Are they not having their erection that they have in the morning typically? So there are questions that you want to be considering, or if you don't want to like verbalize that, you can give them the handout. It's on the screening tool. And if they're indicating those things, then it's like, okay, something's going on, and we need to tackle it now so that we're not having those bone stress injuries or significant time out of sport down the road to get you healthy again.
And that, like, main reason why we're talking about this is because like we see a lot of injuries in terms of like joints and repetitive stress fractures, but like parents might see lack of like sleep disturbances or mental health, or,
they see all the other things,
like, so it's really important that we bring up some of these conversations right away. And
I think that's so true. Like, lean on other people to ask some questions if the athletes are comfortable with it, because sometimes you're only seeing a snapshot of what their day looks like. And it can be hard on even an initial eval to figure out everything. So having a team behind you of PTs, chiropractors, mental health specialists, getting dietitians involved, like it is really a all-encompassing approach. And then there's some blood panels that can be done too, like with the physician to be like, hey, I'm concerned about this. Like, I want to see what their thyroid hormone looks like. I want to see what their vitamin D levels are at. So there's a lot of pieces that if we're only looking at one side of it, it can be easy to miss the other things.
Yeah.
So getting them in. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And then when it comes to like strength training and cross country training with running healthy, like especially with female athletes, how do you navigate these hormonal changes?
Right. Yeah. And I think it's huge because when they're young, like that's the best time, right? To like build bone health, like get all the things that they need. From a physical therapy standpoint and thinking about bone health, especially, what we really need to think about is odd impact movement. So that would be like plyometrics, multi-directional odd impact movements, and then heavy, fast resistance training. So not that you have to like lift as fast as you can, but to stimulate that bone, that osteogenic effect in a bone. With weight training especially, you want to think about that slow eccentric phase. So like you're just kind of slow and controlled and then coming out of that movement faster. So like if you think about a back squat, lowering down slowly and then coming out of it quick. So you're giving that bone the stimulus it needs for that osteogenic effect. With plyometrics, I tell people it's kind of like we want to train a runner like a soccer player or like a basketball player. And that's why multi-sport athletes are usually less likely to get bone stress injuries because they're not doing the same thing over and over and over. So I think a slight saving grace for me was being a soccer player first. Like I still got injuries, but I think I came in a little bit stronger because I had that multi-directional movement, and that stimulates the bones in other ways. So instead of just compression over and over, you're getting the bending, the torsion, you're getting loads from different angles that the bone needs to actually rebuild. I tell people like bones get bored. So if you are running after about 60 steps, your bone is bored. Like it's not gonna rebuild after that. So it's just kind of your structure, it's your stability system, it's your internal scaffolding essentially. Like it's holding you up, but it's not getting stronger just by running. So the strength training and plyometrics are huge for actually like building bone support, getting your muscles stronger. So when muscles pull on bone, that's also what's giving them that osteogenic effect. And a lot of what I know from bone health comes from Rich Willie. He's a really great PT in the running world and has done a ton of research in this area. So I want to help runners now, like when they are in those younger phases and their hormones are changing. It's like, okay, we got to use all that we can to get you stronger now and reduce the chance of another injury. And I think what people have to know is if energy availability isn't there, we're not going to make any progress, right? Because when we're strength training and when we're loading our bones, if they have nothing to take from, they kind of stay below that line of actually getting stronger. So we have to first have the energy availability to do it. And then if they have good energy availability, they're healthy, then the strength training and bone building is actually going to make a difference.
Which is where another sign that you see a lot of times, like is that plateau.
That plateau.
Or, with people, they're working hard, but they're just not getting better. They're not...
And so I think it all comes back to that, fuel in, fuel out. If we're not fueling appropriately, we're not going to see those strength gains or those physiological changes. And we won't recover as well. Sleep's going to be off. There's going to be a lot of illness that's going to set you back even more. So there's so many factors to it, but I do think, strength training for runners is huge, and making sure it's heavy load. I think the old way of high reps, low weight is out the window for sure. You want to load athletes and thinking about all the major muscle groups. So back muscles, our glutes, our quads, our calves, kind of all the areas that take the most load when we're running, and our core strength. We want to make sure those are loaded, and those are our foundational lifts. And then plyometrics are just quick impacts off the ground. So if you think about like skaters, a drop jump into like a counter movement jump is going to be important. So getting different directions and then being quick off the ground is what's really helpful to get that osteogenic effect. And even with plyometrics, it's helpful to do them almost throughout the day versus like everything all at once. Because again, the bone gets bored. So if you just do the same thing over and over, your bone's going to recognize that and be like, well, I'm done. And then it's just kind of, you're going through the motions. Whereas if we can spread it out, it's like, oh, new effect, new effect, new effect. And it has an easier time of getting stronger that way.
It's such a specialty. I mean, and that's what like really shows, like if you are a runner, if maybe you're recovering from an injury, how this one-on-one care is so important. Because if you load too fast, then you're gonna, the bone doesn't have time to heal. It's such a, it's a equation.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, you know, that balance of like return to run. So like when I'm working with people on return to run, I'll tell them at first, it's really just a return to load. Like your body's just getting used to load right now. When you have the, you know, 5 minutes on, 1 minute off, but if you're doing a program like that, don't treat the 5 minutes like, okay, this is my time to run, you know, just think about it as like, nope, my body is like getting used to loading again. And then once we have that base, then we're really doing a return to run. Like once you can run 30 minutes consecutively, no issues, then it's like, okay, now we're like getting back into training. But that initial period of like getting back to running is really just a return to load phase.
For sure.
And then once their body can handle that, then it's like, okay, now we're working with something, but we just got to get your body used to it again first.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. And then for someone who's listening, who's loves to run, but maybe struggling with those recurring pains or plateaus, what's one simple change or mindset shift that could make today, that they could make today that would help them stay healthier and perform?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things, and this probably just sounds cliche, is like listening to your body and getting really used to listening to your body. So if something doesn't feel right, and this goes for anyone, this could be like the youth athlete, this could be, you know, postpartum moms getting back to activity. If something doesn't feel right, don't think it's normal. You know, like it's not normal. It's just common to feel certain things. And that could be aches, that could be pains, that could be with some of the pelvic floor conditions I see, like heaviness, leaking. Sometimes people are talking about it and they're like, oh yeah, this is going to happen at some point, but it's not necessarily normal. It's just common. So I think listening to your body when these things are popping up that you're like, that didn't used to be a problem, seek help, because there are things we can do to help reduce those symptoms, help reduce that pain, get you back to running how you want to be feeling. So listening to your body is huge. And then I think with anything, you know, like more is not always better. So when we're thinking about, you know, how one person might be training, they might thrive off of, you know, 80 miles a week, but someone else might thrive off of 40. So we just have to find that balance, and understanding that training errors happen, even healthy runners get hurt. So when something doesn't feel right, just get on top of it right away so that we can work together to get you feeling better, and you don't have to deal with this, you know, year after year as this recurring injury that keeps popping up.
For sure. So if someone is interested in reaching out to you or finding out more information, how would they get a hold of you?
Yeah, so I have a website. I think that's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me. So it's tempoptandrunning.com, and then I have an email. So that's another helpful thing. So that's Bethany@tempoptandrunning.com. And honestly, like just shoot me a message. I've had some people DM me on socials. You can find me in a lot of different ways, but I offer free consults. So if people just want like a 20-minute conversation to be like, hey, here's what I have going on. Is this something that you think physical therapy could help with? I think that's the easiest way to kind of field some things and be like, yeah, I think PT would help, but like I also recommend these people too to like get on your team so that we can have that collaborative approach. That's probably the easiest way to get a hold of me, and, you know, explore my website, see if the services make sense and fit to you. And if it resounds like with what you're going on, with what you have going on, reach out and we can have that conversation to find a time that works. I work out of 2 locations. So I'm in Hopkins and I'm also in Minnetonka. And so if people are looking at my schedule and you're like, oh, I really want, you know, Hopkins on this day, but it looks like she's in Minnetonka, just reach out and we can make it work for you.
Cool. So thank you for your passion about kind of bringing up this conversation and everything that you do.
Thank you so much for having me and having this conversation. I love talking with other people about this and just sharing knowledge. So I appreciate your expertise as well, and having you as a contact too.
We need to talk about it. We need to normalize it. And we need to
keep bringing it up, because the more people who know about it, the better chances you have of not having to go through what others have gone through.
And you recover faster.
Yes.
And you get back on the
for sure.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you so much.